You know what you're here for. You read the video when you clicked on it. True crime, all that good stuff. Murder, violence, horrible crimes. I'm trying to combat the toll this has had on my mental health by listening to Joji albums right now. So, big shout out to you, Joji. Thanks for helping. Do believe I'm listening to Chloe Burbank right now. Yep. Now, without further ado, go listen to Joji, and also, let's just dive right into this. Buckle your fuckles. New Orleans serial killer. There's a little problem with this naming convention. The main issue being that,
There's a shit ton of serial killers in New Orleans.
yeah. I can't really tell you for sure if I've got the right guy here. Yeah, call me an FBI agent because I can't identify the serial killer here. So we're gonna read about a guy who probably is it. This is the Axeman of New Orleans. I wonder if he's called the Axeman because he's gonna ask me a question. You know, I won Best Humor in high school, and it inflated my ego to unfunny levels. Anyway, the Axeman of New Orleans was an American serial killer active in New Orleans
Wow, I would have never known.
and surrounding communities, including Gretna, from May 1918 to October 1919. So we're really whipping out the average birth year of the Congress member. Press reports during the height of public panic about the killings mentioned similar murders as early as 1911. Wow. But recent researchers have called these reports into question. Recent? What's recent? 1953? The Axeman was never identified, mostly because forensic science before DNA was a fucking joke and still remains as such, spared solely DNA. Now, the Axeman, again, never identified. Shocking. I would have never known that he was on the unsolved true crimes iceberg. The Axeman, of course, mainly targeted Italian immigrants and Italian Americans. That's kind of fucked up. As the killer's epithet implies, the victims were usually attacked with an axe, which often belonged to the victims themselves. That's fucked up. In most cases, a panel on the back door of the home was removed by a chisel, which along with the panel was left on the floor near the door. The intruder would then attack one or more of the residents with either an axe or a straight razor. Crimes weren't motivated by robbery, they were motivated by race, and the perpetrator never removed items from his victims' homes. The majority of the Axeman's victims were Italians, leading many to believe that the crimes were ethnically motivated.
What would have given you that idea?
Many media outlets sensationalized the aspect of the crimes because even in the start of the 20th century, journalists could recognize that not upholding journalistic integrity was wildly profitable. They even suggested mafia involvement despite lack of evidence. You know why? Because that would get people to buy the paper, baby. Some crime analysts have suggested the killings were related to sex. That's weird. And the murder was perhaps a sadist specifically seeking female victims. Criminologists Colin and Damon Wilson hypothesize that the Axeman killed male victims only when they obstructed his attempts to murder women, supported by cases which the women of the household were murdered, but not the man. The less plausible theory here is that the killer committed the murders in an attempt to promote jazz music? The fuck? This was suggested by a letter attributed to the killer which stated he would spare the lives of those who played jazz in their homes. That's a roller coaster. For one, why would you kill people? They're kinda human. Better yet, why specifically Italian women? Better yet, why just leave the dude alive? Better yet, what does jazz have to do with any of this? You Barry B. Benson, you like jazz? No. Oh, well, I guess I have to fucking kill you now, you piece of shit. The Axeman was not caught or identified, and his crime spree stopped as mysteriously as it had started. I guess he just heard one too many jazz songs and chilled the fuck out. The murder's identity remains unknown to this day. Wow, that's shocking. I really thought that he would have turned himself in by like 2022, because he's definitely still alive. Although various possible IDs of varying plausibility have been proposed. On March 13th, 1919, a letter purporting to be from the Axeman was published in newspapers saying he would kill again at 15 minutes past midnight on the night of March 19th, but would spare the occupants of any place where a jazz band was playing. I can't help but feel like this is just like some sitcom-esque harebrained attempt by a group of jazz musicians who are like, oh no, maybe they're Italian jazz musicians, and they're like, so, there's a guy going around killing Italian people. What do we do?
Hear me out. What if we say he's gonna spare them if they're playing jazz? And they're Italian, so they're gonna go to Italian jazz artists.
And then everyone looked at him and was like,
You're a fucking genius.
that's just such a weird detail. Why? Oh, of course, that night all of New Orleans dance halls were filled to capacity, and professional and amateur bands played jazz at parties at hundreds of houses around town. It fucking has to be an advertising scheme. It has to be a musician who learned about the killings and was like, I know what I can do. I know how to help this situation. What the fuck? Anyway, here is a letter from the Axeman that is just kind of slapped like a cock on a table in the middle of this Wikipedia article, so let's see what this weirdo wrote. Hell. March 13th, 1919. I didn't know that hell was a day of the week. Esteemed mortal, they have never taught me, and they never will. They have never seen me, for I am invisible, even as the ether that surrounds your earth. Is this guy 12 years old and on Tumblr? Jesus Christ. How could you write that and not think, geez, I'm a fucking idiot? I am not a human... Okay, nope, I can't read that. That's terrible. What the fuck? I'm not a human being, but a spirit and a demon from the hottest hell. I'm what you Orleanians and your foolish police call the Axeman. When I see fit, I shall come and claim other victims. I alone know who they shall be. What the fuck? I shall leave no clue except my bloody axe besmeared with the blood and brains of he whom I have sent below to keep me company. If you wish, you may tell the police to be careful not to rile me. Of course, I am a reasonable spirit. Yeah, this is all something that a reasonable being, reasonable entity would write, for sure. I take no offense at the way they have conducted their investigations in the past, ineptly. In fact, they've been so... Yep, he's just quoting how stupid they are. His Satanic Majesty, Francis Joseph, tells... What? They've not been so utterly stupid as to not only amuse me, but His Satanic Majesty, Francis Joseph. Who the fuck is Francis Joseph? And why is this guy accusing him of being Satan himself? Francis Joseph I of Austria? What the fuck? Dude, what is happening? I feel like I'm having a fever dream. So, Francis Joseph, also known as Francis Joseph, was German Kaiser at the time. I know he's vaguely related to women's rights protests in America, but what did this guy do to be deemed Satan himself? Anyway, tell them to beware. Let them try not to discover what I am, for it were better that they were never born than incur the wrath of the Axeman. I don't know, man. I feel like a worse fate would be Satan himself, Kaiser Franz Joseph of Austria. I don't think there is any such need of a warning, for I feel sure the police will always dodge me, as they have in the past. The police aren't dodging you. They're not even running in the right direction. They are wise and know to keep away from all harm. No, they're not. They just don't know how to find you. Undoubtedly, you Orleanians think of me as a most horrible murderer, which I am, but I could be much worse if I wanted to. What could you be? Satan himself? Franz... Kaiser Franz Joseph? If I wished, I could pay a visit to your city every night. At will, I could slay thousands of your best citizens, for I am in close relationship with the Angel of Death. Who's the Angel of Death? The last king of Prague? Now, to be exact, at 12:15 earthly time, that really specifies it, on the next Tuesday night, I'm going to pass over New Orleans. In my infinite mercy, I'm going to make a little proposition to you people. Here it is. I'm very fond of... of jazz music, and I swear by all the devils in the nether regions that every person shall be spared in whose home a jazz band is in full swing at the time. I've just mentioned, if everyone has a jazz band going, well then, so much better for you people. One thing is certain, and that is that some of your people who do not have jazzed it out on that specific Tuesday night, if there be any, will get the axe. Well, I am as cold and crave the warmth of my native Tartarus, and it's about time I leave your earthly home. I will cease my discourse, hoping that thou wilt publish this. Really putting the glizzy on us, hitting us with that Shakespearean 3 centuries late. That it may go well with thee. I have been, am, and will be the worst spirit that ever existed in fact or realm of fantasy. The Axeman. I don't know. His Satanic Majesty, Franz Joseph I of Austria. What? Okay. I can't do this anymore. Franz Joseph is Satan. That's all we need to take away from this. Franz Ferdinand I is Satan. That's gotta be the most out-of-fucking-pocket claim I have ever read by a serial killer. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the next one, which is not gonna be nearly as silly or goofy. As a matter of fact, it's gonna be the Strawberry Trail Fire, which its official article name is The Jordan Children, so I'm sure these kids have a happy ending. Definitely. Molly Jordan was a nurse who lived with her 5-year-old grandchildren, 18-year-old Demetra, 16-year-old Bernard, 9-year-old Erica, 6-year-old Jamal, and 10-year-old Ketrick, and her 1-year-old great-great-grandmother. Wow, I know how to pronounce words. Great-great-granddaughter, great-granddaughter, Jasmus, in a home in Dallas, Texas. By 3:30 p.m. on September 28, 1988, all of the children were home from school, so Molly left to work her night shift at the local hospital. She planned to return home at 7 a.m. the next morning. She also carried a beeper with her so the children could reach her at any time. At around 3 a.m. on September 29th, Ketrick awoke to the sound of his brother Bernard talking to someone. He went to the living room and saw his brother talking to an unidentified man. The man were asking Bernard about money. When Ketrick came into the room, Bernard sent him back to bed. A few minutes later, the house was set on fire. The 2 unknown men, who were believed to be drug dealers that Bernard had been buying drugs from, set the house on fire. Bernard had placed furniture in front of the door in the hallway to the bedrooms in order to keep the men from reaching his siblings. However, this left the children trapped in a burning home. When the fire started, the children broke out their windows in order to escape, but the release handle on the burglars' bars jammed. The firefighters were unable to get into the house through the doors because of how the furniture was placed. The burglar bars also prevented an easy entrance for the firefighters. By the time they entered the home, about 10 minutes later, Bernard, Erica, Jamal, and Jasmus were all dead, but Kettrick and Demetra were found barely alive. For now, Demetra passed away later in the hospital. Molly left the hospital when a relative told her that the children were dead. She came home to find the place in flames and almost all of her grandchildren dead. Kettrick told authorities about what had happened that night, and it's believed that the drug dealers had set the fire in an attempt to get Bernard outside. It's also believed that they entered through a window on the front of the house that was not equipped with burglar bars. Now, understandably, the police started looking for, the people who set a fire that,
just killed a few kids. That's pretty severe.
All over drugs. How fucking stupid can people be? Anyway, Kettrick had to undergo several operations, including the amputation of both legs, but he got prosthetics that let him walk again at least. After the fire, hundreds of people from the community donated money to Jordan's family, and since then, Kettrick and Molly have moved to a new home in a better section of Dallas. But they understandably at the time still hoped that the arson and murders could be solved. For suspects, there's a man named Curly. He was an unidentified suspect in the murders and had supplied drugs to Bernard in the past. He was an African-American man who weighs 5'10" and weighed 160 pounds, and allegedly bragged about setting the fire. However, he was never positively identified or located, so it's worth nothing. There's also the little issue of investigators believe at least 2 men were involved in the fire, so where's the other guy? Now, in 2001, investigators received a break in the case. Was this 2001 before 9/11 or 2001 after? Anyway, a new witness came forward. The witness had been arrested on unrelated charges. When he admitted to investigators, he had helped dispose of gasoline-soaked clothes and other evidence on the night of the 1988 fires, so this guy's a snitch. The witness, who was 15 at the time of the fire, claimed that he was a lookout for Jamaican drug dealers in South Oak Cliff. He gave street names for 3 suspects: Freddy Krueger, Curly Diamond, and Silky. Those are some clown-ass names. I would be ashamed if that was my nickname. As a result of this information, investigators re-interviewed several witnesses, who began to name possible suspects. Other suspects were nicknamed Lupe, Coolie, and Soldier. Well, I mean, that's not as cheesy. So that's good, I guess. One witness claimed that Freddy Krueger and Lupe had beat him and forced him to take Jordan home just a few days before the fire. The witness also heard that Bernard had ripped them off. Another witness claimed on the night of the fire the 2 drug dealers were talking about getting revenge on BJ, which was Bernard's nickname. An unfortunate one. It really blows. Shortly after the fire, the witnesses saw the 2 again. He claimed that they were laughing and joking about the sounds of people burning to death. Yet another witness, a former girlfriend of Lupe, asked him if he had set the fire, and he said that he did, and that it was to settle a debt. Again, I gotta ask, how fucking stupid do you have to be to, 1, be rolling around on the streets, having people actually call you Freddy Krueger, and 2,
burn several children alive for drug money?
That's some stupid-ass shit. Now, of course, the drug dealer known as Curly and Freddy Krueger were eventually identified as Curly Diamond. He was also known as Milton Lee Hunter Jr., David Broadbelt, and David Wilson. Well, those aren't as bad as Freddy Krueger. Why would you call yourself that? Investigators learned that he was killed in a New York subway shootout in '92, which ironically remains unsolved. According to the investigators, he was the mastermind behind the fire, so they don't have to investigate anymore. The drug dealer known as Lupe was identified by several witnesses as Vincent Lamont Thomas, and he had been questioned initially but was let go. In 2001, he was arrested and charged with capital murder in the case, but the prosecutors did not have enough evidence to bring him to trial, and the charges were dropped. In August of 2005, however, the prosecutors noted that he can be arrested again if new evidence surfaces, Because there is no statute of limitations on things like, oh, I don't know, arson, murder. Investigators later also identified Silky and learned that he had also died in an unrelated shooting. They identified Cooley and Soldier as well, but have been unable to locate them, and the police now consider the case closed but unresolved. Now let's just take a moment to recognize that the guy who was like, yeah, call me Freddy Krueger, got shot. You deserved it. Rest in piss, bozo. 1994 Lafayette Gardens shootings. I am fighting to not cough as I speak. Okay, we're good. We're chilling. Now, I couldn't really find any actual information on this, so I don't know for sure if I have the right thing. Hopefully I do. Federal prosecutors announced charges yesterday being July 19th, 2005, against 13 men who prosecutors said were members and associates of a Brooklyn gang that had committed 5 murders and kidnapping, and had imported and trafficked narcotics from its base in a Bedford student housing project for more than a decade. I don't think I have the right thing here. This is, here we go. The gang used several apartments in the Lafayette Garden houses to cook, store, and bag crack cocaine. Wow, I really am reading a New York Times articles. Wow. Now, understandably, eventually the time came that someone didn't pay, so they got shot, which led to them getting caught, because every criminal gets caught, but only the stupid ones get caught first. The Iceberg murders, another one that was just a joy to track down. I'm reading this from some off-brand Fox Channel website, so forgive me if I don't get the details of this case just right. On October 5th, 2011, 40-year-old Chen Rong, his wife, 40-year-old Mei Gong Li, were stabbed to death in their home on Seymour Avenue. This is going to be a happy story. The woman's older sister, 53-year-old Mei Jing Li, was also killed inside the home. The couple owned a restaurant called Chinese Happiness. Captain Terry Hines with the Iberville Police Department is hoping cold case will warm up soon. Who the fuck wrote this article? Mike Lacey, you need to put a "the" there. The D'Iberville Police Department is hoping the cold case will warm up again soon. It's just one of those things where we just decided it was time to come out and see if we can refresh everybody's memory and get some more information, he said. We've sent it across the country hoping that we can get some new information on this case. So, who's gonna tell them? The same way that the Queen of England doesn't exist, Santa Claus isn't real, and the Tooth Fairy doesn't take your teeth, she takes something way worse. There's no more information on this case, Captain Terry Hines. It's not gonna be solved. Now, surprisingly, the investigation spread to Atlanta, New York, and even China, where a person of interest is residing. The FBI is working with Chinese authorities to track him down, which, knowing Chinese authorities, won't be very difficult. It's the same person of interest held originally by federal authorities on immigration charges. I don't understand what that has to do with the case, but thank you, Mike Lacey, author of this article. Hines has been working with the FBI since the beginning of the case. Special Agent James Burton recently posted a podcast called Wanted by the FBI to give the investigation an extra boost. This seems like an ad for Wanted by the FBI podcast. What we are looking for is help from someone who can provide information that might help us get these children some answers, get them some peace. Oh yeah, here's something I gleaned in my preliminary research before I decided on this article. Whoever killed these people decided to just leave their 3 kids, so that's heartwarming. Maybe it was Franz Ferdinand first. Satan himself. Now, Captain Hines here wants to make the person pay for the horrendous crime that they did, but like a politician, they're gonna get away with it, and their family will live happy lives after this. The article ends with, if you have any information, you're asked to call the FBI or the Iberville Police Department at 228-396-4252. The Shaw Creek serial killer. Thank you to user Pidar237 from 1 year ago on r/serial killers for giving me something to shamelessly steal and narrate. Big preach for that. It's just, this is their words before I start narrating, so any cringe posted is not my fault. It's just beggars belief to me that this on-sub thanks for the term Mindhunter. Don't you mean Criminal Minds? Hasn't been established as an official unidentified serial killer, that it took research for this guy to be even given a moniker, courtesy of Michael Whalen of the Unresolved podcast. You can miss me with that YouTube link. I am not reading another 55-minute transcript of that podcast. Between the years 1987 and 1993, 4 bodies were found in the woods of rural Aiken County in South Carolina. 2 of the bodies were identified as missing women from that area, Jackie Council, who went missing in 1986, and Ristine Durden, Tyler Durden's mom, who disappeared in 1989. The other 2, found in 1987 and 1993, have remained unidentified since they were discovered. The 2 unidentified women are Aiken County Jane Doe, 1987, and Aiken County Jane Doe, 1993. All of the women are of African American descent and between the ages of 17 and 32. Additionally, some digging revealed that 2 other missing people who could have been murdered by the Shaw Creek Killer are Sharon Lynn Hart Willis, who disappeared on the 10th of July 1987 and has been gone ever since. She was last seen on Church Street in Graniteville, Aiken County, South Carolina. Graniteville is just 11 miles from Eureka, where Aiken County Jane Doe, 1987, was discovered, and 5.9 miles away from Aiken, where Aiken County Jane Doe, 1993, was discovered. Just like the other victims, Hart Wills was an African-American woman in the 20 to 30 age range. Tilwanda Denise Cheatham disappeared on 11th August 1989 from Aiken County, South Carolina. Although she is a lot younger than the other victims, 8 years old, she's yet another person who fits every other profile for the victims to have disappeared from Aiken County during the late 80s to early 90s, which is just a little bit suspect. But hey, the police have done nothing about this. Thank you, Aiken County Sheriff's Department. Really appreciating your hard work here. Really glad to see you guys taking care of your citizens like that. Let's just appreciate that the first comment is Criminal Minds have been using the term on-sub for years. Yes, that's right. That's where you get it. I haven't even seen Mindhunter. I don't know what that is. Criminal Minds used on-sub first. South County Car Bomber. This ought to be an enjoyable 30 seconds. Phrases women have heard before. Anyway, the South County Car Bomber was a person or persons, we don't know, who terrorized St. Louis County, Missouri, with a series of fatal car bombings in 1977. 2 people, Shirley Marie Flynn and Robert Curtis Jackson, were killed on the bombings on October 18, 1977, and November 3, 1977, respectively. A third victim, Ronald Sturgos, escaped escaped injury in an earlier attack on October 7, 1977. The bombings ceased after that and were never solved, despite an extensive effort by the police. The bombings appear to have been completely random, which is what makes most serial criminals, whether it be bombers, rapists, murderers, or kidnappers, easy to track down. They have patterns. When they don't have patterns, you can't fucking find them. Some investigators believed they were the work of a deranged individual. I don't know. I think I'm on team mentally stable person is planting bombs. Although authorities have also noted similarities between the St. Louis County bombings and a car bombing March 7th, 1978, and Paducah, Kentucky, which William Otthausen, who had been Shirley Friend's boyfriend, was seriously injured. Yeah, that's definitely very interesting. maybe these people wronged someone somehow? Did investigators not look into that, or did it just not make it into the Wikipedia article? The Gatton Murders. Thank God we're back into the land of right and shit that I can read. Wikipedia articles. Thank you. The Gatton Murders, also known as the Gatton Tragedy, the Gatton Mystery, and the Murphy Murders, is a name given to an unsolved triple homicide that occurred 1.5 miles from the town of Gatton, Queensland, Australia. Michael Murphy, aged 29, and his younger sisters, Nora, 27, Theresa Ellen, 18, were killed between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. on the 26th or 27th of December, 1898, while returning home from a proposed dance that had been cancelled. Michael was shot and then bludgeoned. Jesus, I know how to read. Strangled and bludgeoned, and Ellen bludgeoned twice. The Murphy family owned a farm at Blackfellows Creek, some 8 miles from Gatton and 61 miles west of Queensland's capital, Brisbane. The 1901 census listed the population as 449 people, and in the late 19th century the town had a major stopover point on the road from Brisbane to the Darling Downs. And what is the Darling Downs, you might ask? I don't know myself. Let's read that little blurb. Farming region. Cool. And with 2 major bridges and a railway line, the town was rapidly expanding as a service center for the district. Michael and Daniel Murphy had both left home, Michael working on a government experimental farm near Westbrook, while Daniel was a Brisbane police constable. Michael had returned home for the Christmas holidays, and on the 26th of December, Boxing Day, 1898, had taken his sister, Theresa Ellen, to the Mount Sylvia races in nearby Caffey. At 8 p.m., Michael and his sisters, Nora and Ellen, left home to attend a dance that due to be held at the Gatton Hall. Arriving at 9 p.m., they found the dance had been cancelled and began the journey home, but failed to arrive. Early the following morning, Miss Murphy asked her son-in-law, William McNeil, to go to Gatton to find out why they hadn't returned. Michael had borrowed McNeil's sulky for the outing, and while on the Tent Hill Road to Gatton, McNeil recognized his sulky's distinctive tracks, the result of a wobbling wheel, turning off the road through a slip rail. McNeil followed the tracks through a rough winding trail through wattle scrub for around 0.75 miles before finding his missing family. McNeil found the victims about 1.2 miles from Gatton. Michael and Theresa were lying back to back, within 2 feet of each other. Nora lay in the same east-west orientation on a neatly spread rug, 28 feet to the east. Both women had their hands tied behind their backs with handkerchiefs, forming a triangle. The sulky faced south, 17.5 feet from Michael and 36 feet from Nora. The horse had been shot in the head and lay still between the shafts. Their legs were arranged with the feet pointing west. This signature behavior has never been repeated in Australian crime, and like the Gatton murders themselves, remains a mystery. Inexplicably, McNeil then contacted Acting Sergeant William Morrell, who was in charge of the Gatton police station. I don't understand why that paragraph started with inexplicably. That seems like a pretty fucking understandable thing to do. Now, this later led and arranged for police from Brisbane to attend. This led to further delays, with the investigating officers not arriving until 48 hours after the discovery of the bodies, which, as you know, the first 48 hours in a case is the most crucial time to track down evidence, so if you aren't even fucking investigating, well, you're kind of shit out of luck. The bodies were moved to Gilbert's Hotel, and at 4 p.m., Dr. von Losberg, the government medical officer at Ipswich, arrived between 4 to 5 p.m. to begin an autopsy. Michael had been shot and struck with a blunt instrument on the right side of the head. Ellen had her skull fractured by 2 blows to the left side of her head. The wounds and positions of bodies, when found, indicated that Michael and Ellen were sitting upright and back-to-back when struck. Nora had also been struck on the left side of her head, pulverizing her skull to the extent that her brain was protruding. In addition, Nora had a harness strap tied around her neck, tight enough to have caused death. It is alleged that both women had been I can't say this word or YouTube won't like me,
but it starts with an R, and it's on screen right now.
but there was an absence of semen. Based on the evidence of Sergeant Orell, he found a pool of blood which turned to soil and which turned the soil to mud and stuck to the underside of the rug on which Nora's body was found. It appears that both women had been, I'm gonna say it, raped with the brass-mounted handle of a whip. Jesus Christ, that's fucked up. An extensive police search for the whip met with negative results. Again, this is 1898. It's really not that hard to hide something. McNeil later testified, although Michael's hands were not tied when he first saw the body, it appeared that his hands had been tied behind his back at one point, with one holding an open purse. However, all other witnesses stated that Michael's hands were not tied, but that a breeching strap lay nearby, and that an empty purse was lying a short distance from the body. When his body was removed from the site at about 1:30 p.m., Michael was now found to have the breeching strap between his untied hands, with the empty purse held in one. Known to have 15 shillings, which in 2010 was worth $100, in the purse the night before, it was speculated that someone may have untied Michael to access the purse. Either Gilbert, one of the party, or McNeil, there's a typo there, McNeil, took the purse, and this has never been explained. The original postmortems were conducted by the government medical officer, Dr. von Lossberg, with Sergeant Orell supervising, and from interviews with people who had seen the bodies, Chief Investigator Stewart determined that Michael may have been shot in the head. I wonder what gave that away.
It definitely wasn't the bullet hole.
But this was not found by Dr. Lossberg. Despite claims that he had been asked to look for a bullet, Stewart ordered all three bodies be exhumed, and it was found the original postmortems were no more than superficial examinations. So I will eat my words there. The bullet hole might not have been what did it. Although decomposition was advanced, it was now found that Michael had indeed been shot in the right side of his head, then subsequently struck square in the same spot with a blunt instrument, so that the later wound was partially obscured the bullet hole. The bullet was recovered from the skull. Never mind, I was right. Suck it, von Lossberg. Mr. Wiggins, J.P., testified that he had ordered the burials without an order for burial because he believed the postmortems had been completed and assumed that von Lossberg had not carried any orders with him. Wiggins assumed an order would be forwarded from Ipswich, and Sub-Inspector Galbraith testified that von Lossberg had told him that he had completed the postmortems and that he had asked if von Lossberg had found a bullet. Galbraith stated that von Lossberg had told him that he had found what looked like a bullet hole with no exit wound, but could not find a bullet in the skull. Dr. von Lossberg testified that he had told Galbraith that he had not performed a post-mortem because he was suffering from blood poisoning, and for him to not have the bodies buried. That's very contradictory. Clerk George Baines testified he was present in this conversation and that von Lossberg had not mentioned the completing of postmortems, his blood poisoning, or the request for Galbraith to not bury the bodies. Von Lossberg replied that he had never seen Baines before in his life. He really pulled that Loki on him. I've never seen this man before in my life. And that even if he had been present, what passed was said in a whisper. So there's no way he would have heard it. The next sub-article here is failure of the police investigation. I don't know, I thought it was going to be successful and that it was just on the unsolved true crimes iceberg for shits and giggles. McNeil contacted Sergeant Orell at 9:15 a.m. on 27th of December. Hold on, is my brain auto-correcting this? Is this McNeil or McNeil? Because it's twice now I've read it as McNeil. Hold on, just... Oh my god, I've been reading it wrong this whole time. It's McNeil. I'm losing my mind. McNeil contacted Sergeant Orell at 9:15 a.m. on the 27th of December. Both men rode to the crime scene where they remained for 30 minutes before Orell returned to Gatton to send a telegram to Brisbane Commissioner of Police. Orell took no notes while at the site, did not interview anyone present, and made no effort to protect the site from a large number of people who had congregated. Now, if you know anything about true crime, which you probably do, that is all of the stupidest possible things you could and couldn't do all together in one. Great job, Sergeant Orell. Fantastic. You deserve Cop of the Century award for that little stunt. Now, of course, the telegram was delivered to Brisbane Police Headquarters at 12:52 p.m. However, because it was a holiday, it was not opened until 9 a.m. the next day. In fact, Orell delegated Thomas Wilson, a magistrate, and William Devitt to look after the crime scene, while he sent the necessary telegrams to the commissioner in Brisbane and the medical officer at Ipswich. Wilson and Devitt did not discharge the duty entrusted to them by Orell, and instead allowed the crime scene to be contaminated. It's a good thing that investigative and forensic science didn't really exist yet at this point, otherwise that would have been ruined. Oh wait, it already was. Several people, including itinerant workers and family members, came under suspicion for the crime, but after a 5-month investigation, no one was charged with the murders. The failure of the Queensland police to solve the crime led to accusations of cover-ups and rumors of incest within the Murphy family. Those are some strong rumors. And these claims were also subsequently never resolved, probably because you can't confirm whether or not dead or alive people, well, dead people are fucking if, they're dead. Theo Farmer alias Thomas Day was a prime suspect for the Gatton murders. He died known as Thomas Ferner in the Sydney Hospital on October 25, 1990, knowledge of which the police and governments in Queensland and New South Wales withheld from the public. But, believe it or not, this crime would go unsolved and remains unsolved to this day. So, that's cool. Lastly, finishing off this half episode, finish strongly, we have the Feeney family murders. Call this level fucking Dom Toretto the way that everyone involved is family. 26 years ago, a mother and her 2 young children was murdered in her home. Only one person was named a suspect and charged with their murders, but acquitted after only 5 hours of jury deliberation. According to friends and family, Cheryl Feeney and her husband John, who were a nurse and a high school science teacher respectively, had a great marriage and family. They had 2 beautiful children, 6-year-old Tyler and 20-month-old Jennifer. Nothing seemed to be problematic until, you're never gonna believe it, it was. February 26. Police went to the Feeney home when alerted that Cheryl did not show up to work for her scheduled nursing shift and no one was able to contact her. What they found inside was 3 bodies lying face down on their beds. Cheryl and Tyler had been beaten to death and Jennifer had been strangled. John was 90 miles away at a teachers' conference in Lake of the Ozarks. Detectives found strange evidence that hinted that someone had staged a crime scene. Some of the strange evidence included the point of entry to the home was a back door. The door did not appear to be broken into because the screws to the latch seemed to be unscrewed rather than pried out. The house ransacked, drawers pulled out, their contents dumped on the floor. Cheryl's purse and jewelry were missing, but cash was left behind in the open. A cryptic message on the master bedroom wall that commanded Cheryl to die. This theory of a staged crime, as well as John's family hiring defense attorney Sean Askinoizi shortly after the funeral, led detectives to name him as the primary suspect. He provided the police with hair and blood samples to compare with evidence found at the home, but refused to take polygraph tests. In the fall of 1995, prosecutors sought to get the case in front of a grand jury to indict John. A jury granted the request, and by January of 96, a grand jury began hearing the testimonies presented in the case. As the jury listened to the case, a vigil on the first anniversaries of the deaths, Cheryl, Tyler, and Jennifer, took place. There's a video below in this article that shows footage from that vigil, but I'm not going to watch that. John submitted additional hair samples and provided handwriting samples at the jury's request. However, he evoked his Fifth Amendment rights when he appeared before the courts for questioning. 14 months after the murders, John was indicted on 3 counts of first-degree murder and arrested April 23rd of 1996. His trial began September 26 of the same year. Despite not having concrete evidence to tie John to the murder of his family, prosecutors felt that he was responsible. This is because they're lazy sacks of shit. Their strategy centered on character assault, which is basically just slandering John until the jury is like, yeah, this guy's a piece of shit. We're gonna put him in jail regardless of the facts of the case. Which is a shitty move, and no respectable prosecutor should use it, so these people shouldn't have their jobs. 4 months before her death, John took out a life insurance policy on Cheryl. 4 women testified that John had an affair with each of them. They claimed that he told them he stood to gain $500,000 in life insurance and other property from the death of his wife and children. Prosecutors also mentioned that John liked to play the role-playing tabletop game Master Vampire, now known as Vampire the Masquerade, with his students. The fuck does that have to do with anything? It has nothing to do with the case. Focus on the fucking details. John's defense forced a lack of physical evidence that showed he was not the killer. Fingerprints found on objects at the crime scene and hairs found on Cheryl's nightgown did not belong to him. Tyler had hepatitis B, determined by the medical examiner to be contracted sexually and not from either parent. Based on this evidence, the defense claimed that someone else was responsible for the deaths of Cheryl, Tyler, and Jennifer. Saturday evening, October 5th at 9:05 p.m., after 5 hours of deliberation, the jury found John Feeney not guilty on all counts of first-degree murder. The prosecution had only circumstantial evidence, and the jury agreed that the case lacked reasonable doubt. Because of this, John was a free man. The investigation into the Feeney family murders did not reopen after the trial. Detectives and prosecutors had always felt that John murdered his family,
because let me emphasize again, detectives and prosecutors will often find the first excuse to not do their jobs.
John's teaching contract, however, lapsed when he became the primary suspect in the family murders. He never went back to teaching, but moved to South America a couple years after his acquittal and became a missionary. So, yeah, rest in peace. Prosecutors tend to be lazy, which I think is a major problem with the American justice system, and whether or not you play D&D has nothing to do with whether or not you'll kill people. And with that, you have it. This is all of level 12, all recorded, and the next episode of the True Crime series that you'll see next week will just be all of level 13, because this half-level format is going away for the last 4 weeks of this series. We have nothing more than these levels to go, and then we're done. Thank God. If you're new here, thank you for watching this far. Thank you for watching it all, whether you're new or not. If you haven't already, consider subscribing. It's completely free, and you can always undo it if you hate my guts later. And without further ado, I'm gonna shut up. Have a good time, and until next time, memento mori.